So it's a pleasure to be here, and like Joanne said, I teach entrepreneurship here, and as part of that, it's great to see a variety of different businesses emerge from our wonderful engineering students. And so today, we have 4 students with us who have done a number of things. All of them have been in through the entrepreneurial program at Olin, but also, I think all of you have now taken mobile development or development classes. So they've been engaged in not only the entrepreneurial side, but also certainly in terms of coding some of their own websites and services. And who here's taken the mobile app development class as well? So, 2, okay, great. So today we'll talk about services in the cloud from a student perspective. And I'd like to just say that
we're talking free services, right?
Well, some yes, some no. But that might be a good point of discussion. I know that some of the services used aren't free, but it'd be interesting to find out who pays for them, and if it's instructors or Olin or how that works exactly. And yeah, we should.
Some guy named Earl.
There you go. So, and I just want to say, please just jump in. We've got a small enough group, and this is a broad enough topic that we might as well hone it in and specifically address your interests. So just jump in with any questions at any time. So let's start out by having the students introduce themselves. So.
Hi, I'm Purva Singhal. I'm a junior here. I'm an electrical and computer engineering major, but my focus is in software design.
I'm Nicholas Manier. I'm also a junior. I'm an applied mathematics for computer science major. I've taken a handful of computer science classes, including a web development course, not the mobile development course.
My name is Marco Morales. I'm a senior at Olin. My major is engineering with a concentration in product design and development. So I've done some mechanical side of things, hardware things, and some software side of things.
My name is Rachel Stedman. I'm a senior here at Olin College, getting my degree in electrical and computer engineering. But like Purva, I have kind of an emphasis on software and design.
Do you guys want to, maybe we'll start out. Do you want to go down and talk a little bit about the services that you've used, and maybe what your favorite or least favorite experience has been?
So very popular services that I'm sure all of these people use are certain things such as Google Docs and Dropbox. And I personally really like, for example, Dropbox. It's a super convenient way for me to, if I'm on multiple computers or if I'm switching partitions between Windows and Ubuntu, then I have access to all of my documents regardless of where they are. Of course, certain issues come up such as, am I going to accidentally lose information on the cloud, or someone else that I don't want to share my information with, are they going to access it? But overall, I've really enjoyed my experience with that technology.
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I use Dropbox. I have Windows and Linux partitions, and I also use sort of 3 different computers fairly sort of day to day. And so Dropbox helped me, pretty much everything I do is on Dropbox, because that's the only way to keep it in sync between all my different computers. I guess the only service I can think of besides those 2 that I use frequently is Github, which allows me to sort of keep my projects tracked and managed. Oh yeah, and Heroku, I guess that's a... I use Heroku to deploy when I'm releasing code.
Are you at the paying level of Dropbox yet?
No. So
okay, just ask me.
Everything I do is in plain text, so 2 gigabytes actually covers quite a bit.
Okay, so in terms of the services I use most regularly, for file sharing and whatnot, Dropbox is huge. I got in early, so I think I have like 7 gigs for free, which is why I'm set. I've used, the other thing I use a lot nowadays is Bitly, which is a URL shortener. That's what it started out at least as. And I use that to package and put on the web whatever I need really quick. So if I need a picture to send out, I'll put it in my public folder on Dropbox, go to Bitly, put in the URL for the Dropbox link, customize it so it's, Neuro 200 Lab 1 or whatever it is. And that's what I share around as a meaningful link. And you can also do something on Bitly now, which is you wrap up all these separate links and bundle them into basically a blog. So An interesting sort of quick story is that I was working for Autodesk on a scope project, and we were sort of broadcasting and putting up on a web page through a bit.ly bundle all of our screenshots for what we were doing, all the mock-ups, all the versions, and because it was linked back to a Dropbox page, I could update the mock-up and it would just update the blog sort of automatically for me, which was great, and let me add descriptions and whatnot. And then we realized that we were going to actually build what we were looking at, or were interested in possibly building what we were going to do. So Autodesk was like, oh, here we have to redefine our NDA, redefine our restriction policies, and what information we need to get out. So I had to go get rid of all that information and scour everywhere I put things to sort of make them private again. And the last category of things that I use online services for are very specialized single apps. So Beanstalk is what I've used for code deployment and managing of that. And then at different points in time, every single 37 Signals product, they have a number of different tools. But essentially those I just sort of turn on and off whenever I need them. So I always have accounts on all of them. A lot of them are not active if I need to have them active or need to be paying to have them active. And I'll just like go up and down on base plans and different plans depending on when I'm actually using it. That's it.
Marco, actually, before we leave you, can you speak a little bit about light learning? Because Marco was involved in a very comprehensive project involving a number of Olin students to develop some software for school kids. And so you guys did a ton of development, and I imagine you used some services there as well.
Yep. So as Steve said, I took a year off between my sophomore and junior years to work on this project. The big tools that we used Beanstalk was the big one. So through Subversion, we were able to upload our Tortoise SVN. We uploaded all of our code back and forth through this Beanstalk application, and we could deploy to our servers. I think it's still at alightlearning.com. But that was actually the primary service in terms of software development. We went through pretty much every single collaborative document tool that you can imagine. Etherpad back in the day, Google Docs, Zoho suite of tools. We tried out everything. Google Docs. I mentioned Google Docs. And
Used it twice.
we used it all. And so we actually had multiple competing systems. We redid our whole how we communicate as a team and how we share documents several times. We tried out SharePoint workspaces, or some beta that they had. Windows' Mesh Live services, which I think they just got rid of the beta and now rebranded as something else, so that's not a name that will help. But it's sort of also cloud computing that's integrated into Windows 7, or cloud server upload stuff. And I think that was most of it. Like I said, we played around with all of the 37 Signals products, which are project management tools and all these other communication tools and tracking tools. As well as actually the last one I'll mention is Atlassian, which is also like this suite of tools that are used for software development that you can pay. There's student sort of pricing for it, and you can pay for just a wiki server, just a chat client, just a project management tool, an agile software development kit. And they all connect to each other if you're using all of them at once, or just can work as independent tools. But that's it. That's all I can think of.
Great. Thanks, Marco. Great.
So I'll try to mention things that haven't been mentioned. One of the things that I think a lot of Olin students use is typewith.me, and it's a real-time collaborative document editor, kind of like Google Docs, except I think it's better. And it's essentially a link that you, every Typewith.me has a unique URL that you can just send out, and everyone who has the URL can immediately click on it and start typing, and you can have people colored by whoever's editing it. Say it again. Typewith.me. And then the other kind of cloud services I use Backupify to back up all of my tweets and my Gmail, and you can sign up to have a bunch of different services backed up for free. And then what I'm
and it backs up your tweets, other social media.
Yeah, and your Google Docs.
And what's the name?
Backupify. And the other thing that I'm really excited about lately, because I recently got my HTC Evo, and it has completely replaced my camera. I no longer use my camera. I take photos with this, I take videos with this, I upload them to my Flickr and YouTube directly. I found this extremely useful for project documentation, because when I'm working, like I don't want to carry around my camera, but I always have my phone. So I'll be working on like my computing and craft project, and I'll pull out my phone, take a bunch of pictures of my project, upload them to Flickr. I have access to them on my computer, or I'll take a video, upload it directly to YouTube, send that link to my professor, and I'm done with my project. Like that's been really useful to me.
Video of your dog eating your homework, right?
Don't give them any ideas.
Honestly, I'm looking forward to the time when I just have an operating system that all it has is a browser and everything is sort of just on the cloud, because it takes away so many worries from you. I don't need to think about where it's located, where it is, and it makes sharing so much easier, which is very, very important in this day and age where so many things have become collaborative. Yeah.
No, actually, right along this line, what are the things that you'd like to see in the cloud that you don't have available to you today, or you aren't using today? Kind of like along the lines of what you were starting with, just give me a browser and then have everything in there. What are the things today that you're most interested in?
Well, I mean, to start out with, for example, basic things like Microsoft Word, like now they're soon moving up to the cloud, but still, most people still use a desktop application. I'm just saying that I'm looking forward to when all of its features, for example, are up in a browser, such that it's very easy to share and communicate.
So really a desktop cloud, almost.
Essentially. And that way I don't have to worry about, for example, if my hard drive crashes, I know it's already backed up somewhere. And best of all, I can just access it from anywhere. And if you think about it, it just takes away so much pressure from your mind. And I'm not sure if you guys would agree,
But that's Google's vision. What's missing?
Yeah, it's
for
Chrome
you now?
OS.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
So what's missing from Google? That is Google's vision. So what's missing for you now?
No, but it hasn't been
But
completely
it's the vision,
achieved
but
yet,
you can't get it all
yeah.
there.
Well, that's what I'm asking. What's missing? What's missing from Google? Because that is exactly their vision.
So I guess my quick thought on that is sort of maybe not too much on the design side, but you can buy netbooks right now that are based off Chrome OS's browser, and that's all it is. It's a browser.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that because no one is used to that, that's sort of a very weird thing to do. It's really weird to turn on the computer and it's just I sign into my Google account and it's a browser. That is, where are the files? There's no physical location of things, and all these metaphors that you're used to and have built up over 20, 30 years are gone. Right? And so how do you... For me, I still remember a floppy disk.
For you, it's not 30, I don't
Okay, sure.
So which multiverse are you beaming in from now?
For some of us,
Sure.
it is.
For me, the floppy disk is like the last old thing that I remember. Or the big disks. That was like even older when I was...
Punch cards.
Big by big, you mean 5 1/4.
Yeah, exactly.
I laugh at your 5 1/4.
Yeah, so I think that's the big challenge, is the fact that it's weird to not have file system storage in some place.
So I would actually kind of take a different perspective and say that what's the difference between a Dropbox folder on your computer and a normal folder? I mean, you interact with them the same exact way. The difference is that one's synced with the cloud and one isn't. And so I think there's a difference between having everything on your computer synced with the cloud and having nothing local on your computer. So I don't know, but I think you could. So what I think is missing is I like Microsoft Office a lot, and Google Docs does not hold a candle to it. So I can't give that up. And I mean, I've actually moved into the cloud. Like I use Aviary for audio file editing, which is like a cloud audio editing software, because I choreograph for dance and I need to cut my music. And in the new version of Windows, like the Movie Maker, you can't actually edit audio files. So I moved to the cloud for that.
I have a question for you guys, because I had heard a rumor that, I don't know if it was last semester or the semester before, there was a weekend where the wireless went out, and it caused wreaked havoc on obviously getting assignments done and things like that, because someone wasn't involved. How much of a concern or issue is that? And actually, what happened?
We went to bed.
That's That's not the excuse I heard from my students.
I mean, the benefit to Dropbox is that you still have local, right? That hybrid thing we were talking about with local on the cloud. So in many cases that wasn't interrupted, but I don't remember that specific weekend, so other people might comment on that.
I'm psyched they don't remember it. That's good. Keep going.
I do remember it.
It's like the 60s, they don't remember.
Or they were the cause of it, no one.
It wasn't quite a weekend. It was, I think it was 17 hours in total that it was down.
It was counted.
I mean, I know people who were paying the server every hour or so. So,
That was helping with fixing it.
yeah, I'm sure it was. Yeah, that's the big impediment to me from the cloud is exactly that. That I like going places with my notebook computer and not needing to connect to someone else's sketchy Wi-Fi that they left unprotected. Or
Well, let's maybe talk a little bit more about that. How about the whole security issue? It's something I imagine keeps a lot of us up at night. So, what are your perspectives? You know, from a student using it for primarily academic applications and things, but also plenty of personal information.
Right, security/privacy.
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
So I think the biggest thing that people, or the biggest thing I think of when I think of privacy settings is Facebook, because that's sort of the best example of my social layer all wrapped up into one place. And Facebook's privacy settings are terrible. And you need to sort of go back every couple months, or every time you're reminded about how terrible they are. Like an aunt that replies, it's like, what is this photo, right? Or, not that that's happening, but you know, it's that kind of thing that you're like, oh, I need to revisit exactly how I'm doing this. It requires a lot of maintenance, I think. I think the only other space that I can think of in terms of like my privacy settings would be Google Dashboard or Google Profiles, which sort of I use most of Google's online services like Gmail, Google Reader, Calendar. I use all that whole suite. So that dashboard actually shows me exactly what I'm sharing and on what platforms or which ones are the products. I don't go there very often, but it's also like Facebook. Every couple of months, I'll go back and see and review what it is that I have on there.
What about things like Latitude and Foursquare, which are, from, I don't know, my perspective, a lot more invasive, because if people know I'm at the bar, they know I'm not at home.
Right.
And that's a bad thing.
So it's interesting because I manually set my Facebook privacy setting to not allow other people to check me into places. Because I didn't have a device where I could check into places. So it seemed weird to let other people check me in when I wouldn't even check myself in. So I'd set that off. But I recently got an upgrade to the app, or the Facebook app on my phone, that added places to the Palm Pre sort of WebOS application. And so one of the things it prompts you with is, would you like to enable network places, and would you like to allow people to let you check into places? And so it was easy, so I just said yes. And someone checked me in just yesterday when I was with her at Emerson working on a project. And that was fine, but
surprising.
But surprising. I
Did the bar talk to you? Maybe they said, like, you realize you're not old enough to be in this building right now?
I just have a comment about, I'm a believer that Facebook is changing the way companies are, because they're putting the privacy settings in your hands and in your controls. Now they're giving you lots of options. So I'm a proponent of Facebook privacy from that perspective, and I wonder, about say things that you put up on YouTube or things that you put up under the Bitly. Those are public. Those you just don't know who else has access. You just don't know who else is looking or who's looked at it. So why is that? Why is Facebook, a pain for you, and yet the places that are just making it so free that they don't even track, they don't care, and it's like everyone has access to it. Why is that better?
I think it's because you have the transparency. You know when I put up something on YouTube that everyone's going to see it. So since I know that, I'll be very careful about what I put up. Whereas in Facebook, it's mostly developed to just share with your friends. And so when you have So if I have a video to post that I just want to share with people in a certain network, then I'll put it on Facebook. But if it's something that I would want the world to see, for example, to spread an idea, then I would put it on YouTube. So it's that transparency that allows you to make the proper decisions about where you're posting things.
Yep.
And because Facebook is meant to be for personal networks, why privacy becomes a much bigger concern with Facebook.
I think, just a quick comment, I think I've tended towards realizing more and more, well, I think it's very different from my brother growing up, who's 4 years younger than me. And he's grown up with Facebook being a part of, him growing up, so through middle school, through high school. And for him, there's things that he posts on there that are not English. Like, I don't know what he's saying. It's sort of some other IM speak that I don't understand anymore. And I didn't post anything like that because I didn't have that kind of like broadcast mechanism. So I don't know. I feel like that's a different world to me, honestly. So I think there's actually a different level of that in like 4 years from now. But at least for me, I generally have one online identity. If you look up that one online handle, it's in every single site that I ever have will be that one online handle. And so I generally don't put up things that I don't want to have be up. Right? It's maybe a little different for younger people, but.
I would agree with that. Like, I operate under the assumption that everything I put on the internet, like, could be visible to anyone. And like, I mean, if all my Gmail became public, I probably could find something embarrassing there, but I'd live. There's nothing like super detrimental. But I think I have a greater problem with what other people are posting. So like, when my brother finally got on Facebook, he started posting all these pictures of me as like a kid that I wouldn't have voluntarily posted, and like tagging me in all of them, and I'm just like, why?
Let's talk.
Question for you. When was the last time you were able to undertake a project without some data interruption in the first hour? You seeking information, it coming in, you getting distracted, a couple of thumbtacks, because I hear increasing feedback from employers, because I recruit, that critical thinking skills for your generation are diminishing because you guys are always online, always interacting, and that the ability to see something through, concentrate for a period of time, pluses or minuses, is diminished. So I'm just wondering what your experience is in just terms of your ability to concentrate on a single subject sans interruption.
Dr. Tim Mead asking, how diminished do you feel?
In a nice way. In a nice way.
Well, our generation screwed things up with great critical thinking skills. So I'm not, it says that you can't do better than we do.
I feel like I have different modes. Like there's some times where I'm very open to receiving, emails, and like I'll have my phone out because I just like I kind of want to be interrupted. But it's interesting.
You're like going on a date with Thornton.
So true.
But it's interesting because I have Ubuntu on my computer and I have a Windows partition. And when I'm in Windows, I'm interrupted a lot more because Outlook pops up every time I get an email. Whereas in Ubuntu, I actually have to log into webmail to see if I have any mail. And so like I find that when I'm in Ubuntu, I get into like longer blocks of like work mode where I just am programming for hours without interruption. So I think it depends. Like I'll turn my device's sound on and off depending on my state, so to speak. But I mean, it is interesting when I have like my phone and my iPad and my computer all buzzing when I get an email.
There's probably a setting for that in Outlook, by the way. You probably tell it not to pop up.
Yeah, I'd have to find it first.
Also, I mean, you might have a diminished individual critical thinking, but you.
You're playing man. Go ahead.
All you old guys look alike.
That's called stereotyping. I didn't want to go there.
But you have an increased collaborative thinking,
Right, that's right.
And I mean, I find it very useful if I'm working on a project that I can really easily, I am my friend asking, oh wait, what's your opinion on this? And it might be an interruption, but he will give me a different viewpoint or a point of thinking that I did not really have easy access to earlier without these technologies, because it's very different from like calling someone on the phone to ask them for their opinion than just like IMing them, for example. And so in that way, I feel that you do have higher thinking in a way because you get different perspectives, and it's much easier to get these perspectives. So it works both ways.
And when you enter the work environment, are you expecting that same environment to exist where you can collaborate with people across oceans, geographies, languages, etc.?
I would really hope so, actually,
Right.
because
Yeah, actually, I'll chime in just from my instructor's perspective. One of the things here that's really special about Olin is that most projects are collaborative, so small teams are really the essence of so much of our instruction here. But I think that what Parva says is just, it's something I've struggled with over here at Olin over the past 5 years. It's hard for example, I know that students many times have trouble getting physically together, that they can't find times to all meet, and this might be a team of 4 or 5 students. So, we're wrapping up this week some 3-week projects that were all team-based, and the average team size was 5. And I know that there was a lot of difficulty in getting people together, everybody at the same place at the same time. But nevertheless, I've sort of become more comfortable over the years, and maybe it's just part of the culture here at Olin, but students are actually, I don't see any suffering in terms of what they're able to accomplish. And I think a lot of these tools are just extremely powerful. One issue that comes up for me, though, and I imagine this is at the interface with for employers as well, relative to IT infrastructure and so forth, is the fragmentation that's involved. There's so many different applications, and so it's, for example, a student might send me something from Dropbox. Well, I use it now, but or some other service perhaps that I don't use, and it takes me time if I'm going to sign up, and maybe I don't want to. I question their security or privacy, and so sometimes there's an assumption that everybody's on the same page, and I find that to be frustrating. I'm not sure, does that affect you guys? Like using so many different services versus something that's more aggregated or streamlined?
I think we've sort of formed a culture of the different applications we use, and it depends on what we're trying to do. For example, we'll only use typewith.me if it's something that's short-lived probably, and we don't care at all if other people in the world see it. So maybe for quick notes, because that's a permanent URL that anyone can see essentially, whereas we'll use Google Docs for more private things and such. So, but I completely understand your viewpoint because there are so many applications. So, but I feel that a culture forms around certain ones, so that makes it easier.
I think a quick comment on that. I think one of the things I just realized about the student perspective on everything is that if anyone finds any of the links that I've ever used online, Bitly, anything else, at the end of the day, I would find it useless because there were notes or some intermediary step along some other deliverable, and you don't understand exactly what I was doing before and after. So most of that data, even if it was sensitive to some extent, I have both security through obscurity and then security through, like, you're not going to be able to figure out what it is that I was doing. So those two are enough, generally, that almost everything I do is covered. Because it's a sort of throwaway, right? It's kind of funny when you think, hey, all my Bitly links are going through Libya, right? But at the end of the day, that doesn't actually impact my day-to-day, or maybe after I graduate and after I have to worry about documents that companies have. But at that point, that policy will exist. And so I just follow that sort of culture that
Joanne, I probably should know, what is the intellectual property policy here on developing things and who could patent and who did? What is it here?
Basically, if you make it, you own it. We have no license transfer office, so students, faculty, and staff, it's their IP.
Yeah.
So I mean, in addition to privacy, I mean, you guys are pretty good, pretty smart, pretty good ideas. That's another consideration. Intellectual property, somebody sees your notes or things like that. More and more, I think it is something you need to be aware of, sensitive to.
The other thing I'll say is there's people in the world like me who sometimes get paid to piece together things, to find prior art, to bust a patent. And so if I have access to that stuff, you might think, well, it tells no story. It may actually tell me enough of a story to take away your patent.
Are you afraid now?
Our goal is to drive you into the Stone Age instead.
My pushback is like, well, at what, like, so at what cost though? Like, I mean, we could become paranoid and, you know, start meeting in person and write everything down on paper, but like, at what cost to our productivity? And I'd like to address the question about mismatched tools. I think one of the great things about students is that, like, willingness to just adopt new technology like that. You know, if I'm using Dropbox and I join a team and like no one else uses it, and I say this is really cool, we should use it. I mean, like within the next 5 minutes, everyone will have it downloaded and working on the computer, and we'll be using it as a team. And that, I mean, that's how I ended up using it. I was on a team with the upperclassman. He said we should use Dropbox. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'll download it. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I'm going to use it in all my other team projects now. And so that's kind of like how the technologies get spread, and everyone may not be using it, but eventually everyone will be.
I remember saying that about Mosaic. This is way cool. This is going to catch on.
I was just curious, with all these different applications, the comments from the
Peanut gallery.
gallery here came up early on. Are you paying for any of this? What is the expectation? Is the expectation that these services are just free, or do you think have you paid or will you pay for any of these going forward?
A lot of the services that I use are like Dropbox and Google Docs. They are free for us, but I think a lot of that resides in the fact that we're students, and so of course this will change later. I know some of the services that we do get, for example, in our web development course, our professor finds funding, for example, by talking to the company of interest and to get us hosting, for example. What? Right. Or yeah. But in general, the services that I do use are free, and a lot of and some of it is because the stuff that I'm putting out there, for example, on GitHub, is open source, so I'm not necessarily making it private, and because of that, they're willing to give it to us for free. But of course, once we start making things proprietary, then that will change.
So I guess for me, as a student, I turn on and off services as I wish. So Netflix, I only activate during the month of December/January. That's when I'm on break, and that's when I'm at home, and that's when I watch all these movies. So it's only on that month, so that's the only month of the year I pay for it. Right? Whereas there's other ones like Pandora, which I will pay the $36 a year because of the way they set up the payment plan, and now I'm set. So there's a couple I've decided to pick even as a student, as yes, I will pay for this, this is sort of my overhead. But nearly everything else that gives me the flexibility to do month to month, I take advantage of the month to month. And every 30-day trial that everyone and coupon code. So.
I'm currently, I think the only cloud service that I'm currently paying for is Crash Plan Backup, which backs up like all my files on my desktop to the cloud.
Oh, but what Marcus said, that's another very cool thing about cloud services is that a lot of it is month to month, as opposed to like a desktop application, which you pay a huge amount for once. So it's really a cheaper option as well, which I think is a huge benefit of cloud services.
Question? How about voice and video cloud applications? Are you using any of that?
I think about half of Olin is probably in my Skype contact list, which makes it so easy to navigate through it. But yeah, so I use Skype, and I've never needed to use any of their pay-for services. They offer enough free that I don't ever feel the need to expand beyond.
Skype as well, Google Voice and video chat, Facebook now as well. Skype, I've gone through three different waves of paying for it. My phone is missing. Okay, well, I'll pay $8 to get a phone number from them and voicemail, and now everything will route through to that phone. Or my phone disappears, and now everyone calls me on my Google Voice number, which is connected to someone's phone, right? So like I've like paid for it in little waves and spikes, but that's
How often does your phone disappear?
a lot.
I actually found Marco's phone on the grass one day. I was walking along and I see this phone ringing.
That's happened at least 12 times. I've always do a two-factor.
What are your habits vis-a-vis information services? Do you have sites you go to every day just to see what's going on, or are there just news sites bombarding you every day and you wait for a friend to say, have you seen this thing on Rival Sports or something like that? Or do you have some habits that are forming?
Reddit. It's a website where you can post anything, and that is my sort of news conglomerate source now. I do follow a handful of blogs, and if I'm really feeling ambitious, I'll actually go read them on.
We should benchmark you first. Do you know what's going on in Libya?
Vaguely.
Yes, vaguely.
Yes. I mean, it's practically looking like a civil war now, is basically my understanding. So.
Would that come from Reddit? I mean, would stuff like that show up there? I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, the real news.
And who feeds Reddit? I've seen it before, but
who doesn't feed Reddit? It's probably
yeah, it's
you
users.
don't, I don't. He doesn't.
It's all user submitted.
Okay, but not professional content generators.
There's certain people I follow on Twitter, like Scott Kushner, that I will read articles they post. I also have several blogs I follow on Google Reader, and then I also use Olin. It's kind of like student curators, because we have a email list called Randomness, where people will email out links of interest, and some of them are kind of silly, but others are like, this is what's happening in the news right now, you should know about this. And so I pay attention to what's happening there.
Does anybody read online, let's say, any sort of news paper or something where the content has been pre-aggregated for you?
So, to answer that and sort of a follow-up to what you said, I think, and the follow-up to that critical thinking comment from back a while ago, I only really go out of my way to find a news source like CNN or Al Jazeera if I know there's something going on, or if I've heard through some other aggregator form that something I should take a dive into. So it's sort of like, I don't know if there's an expression for it, but it's like something with the D, dive and devour. So like there's different tiers for me about what I'll choose to, like, how deep I'll go into information. When I'm at devour mode, it's like recently was go to CNN, go to Al Jazeera, which I'd never found until recently because of a Twitter link. And that's where I'll get all the stuff about Libya, all the stuff about what's going on. But it's only because I decided to dive in. If I were to go every day to CNN, it would be a waste of my time. And it is, so that's why I stopped doing it. I think it's one of the things that I've realized about myself, and this may be specific to engineering types, but if it's not something that I'm getting what I want out of, or there's other ways to do it better, I will find that better way. And I think we're used to that in general. I'll stop using that service if it stops being useful, and this start, like, just on and off on all these switches is really convenient. So going back to that critical thinking thing, I think that it may be true that we have more things on, but we're also aware of the importance of which ones are on and which ones are off. Like, I will quit Skype, I will close all these things. I'll close all these Facebook tabs and all this, and it's open in like 4 different browsers and all these different places, but I'll close it when I want to have them all closed. And Outlook notifications, I stopped using Outlook because of the notifications and a bunch of other reasons, but I do have some notifications. And like, I'm using a browser now that pops up a lot of notifications. And that's fine with me for a while, but once it gets annoying, I'm just going to stop using that browser. Like, it's not a problem. And I know that I will, at some point, probably stop using it instead of changing that setting. So I'm super malleable in that sense. So I think you are super aware, hyper aware now of the specific channels you have open, and it's hard to lie to yourself. But at the same time,
that comes with age.
But at the same time, my Facebook being open is actually, it's not 100% useful, but it's some fraction actually useful. Right? Because the people who I follow on Twitter, the people who I follow, who are my friends on Facebook, especially Olin students, will post interesting things. And so now I'm commenting on that interesting thing that's as much a learning experience and is vital to what it is that I do in a very rough, I'm involved in this kind of context. So it actually winds up being fractionally useful. And I sort of fool around, so it's sort of a bit, but.
Quick poll. How many people have heard of Flipboard?
Flipboard?
Flipboard.
Yeah,
It's an iPad. Flipboard is really cool. I discovered it somewhat recently, but what it does is it pulls, so like, you can connect it to your Twitter and your Facebook and your Google Reader and a bunch of other sources for news, but what it does is it looks through your Twitter, and if someone posts a link to an article, it pulls that article, and it will build a personal magazine from links that have been shared by your friends via Facebook and Twitter. So like, I can pull it up on my iPad and show you afterwards, I guess. But it like literally makes a magazine that you can flip through of articles that people have posted on your Twitter. So the concept is that it's personalized because it's presumably content you're interested in because it's been shared by people whose opinion you value.
Yeah, it's
Flipboard.
Flipboard. Yeah, somebody shared that with me just a few weeks ago as well, and it's brilliant. It basically, you can also select your own news channels, and it just creates this, you just, flip through the pages and see this custom, personalized. Yeah, it's an iPad, I don't know, it's probably available for the iPhone as well.
Actually, two things that I use along that route is Pulse, which has just showed up, and also Google's FastFlip. And these are aggregators and make it easy to access traditional news sources. An awful lot of this is to try to get pointers to things that are interesting, and using what your friends are recommending is a really good way. Sometimes though, I think I need to always look at the news, not particularly that I want to see, but that I should see. And how do you do that? That piece is different. Stuff you should know, but your friends aren't tweeting it and aren't doing it or anything else. That's CNN once a week.
The Flipboard is only for the iPad.
Only for the iPad.
Yeah.
So actually, how many of you use a tablet? Is anybody here?
Hopefully
Soon, okay. So it's something you're looking forward to?
My Dell computer from Olin expired its warranty, so I needed to replace it, and the motherboard died. So instead of buying a new laptop, I spent $200 on an old motherboard that had a warranty. So my Dell still exists, and I bought Dell's Inspiron Duo, which is a little netbook, 11 inches, but you can flip the screen. So like the whole screen flips and flattens down like a tablet. So I have that, which is sort of an interesting new form factor that exists. But
along those lines, how do you use your mobile devices? Like, where's the intersection between your laptops and mobile devices? Do you, other than short things like tweets or Facebook posts or God forbid a phone call, what do you use the mobiles for?
On the go.
I'm actually kind of an odd case in that I use my phone for texting, and that's about it. I will occasionally make a phone call if really forced. But I do not have a data plan, and I have no interest in a data plan. The only thing I would actually want to use there is Google Maps, but I have other ways of accessing Google Maps, the internet. But I don't want... The big thing for me is I do not want to be reachable by email at all points in time in my life. I want to shut off that channel once in a blue moon.
But you do have a netbook.
I do have a netbook. But that requires me to turn it on. So.
I have email always here, and like Nick said, I don't really ever make calls. The calls are very rare. Like the phone is no longer for a phone call.
Your mom knows that, by the way.
Well, she knows. Well, but I talk to my mom now via Google Chat because I moved her onto Gmail for that specific purpose. So now if I'm going to text someone even, it's not even worth pulling out my phone because it just takes too long to grab it, open it, and type on this thing. Because I can just go to Gmail, which is always open, and SMS via Gmail. So, it'll show up as a weird number, but people are used to weird numbers always being for me. And I'll say it's Marco just to clarify it's someone else. But even for phone calls, I'll call via Google or Skype instead of doing that. If it's just or in my pocket even. If I have my hand on my mouse, Gmail's easier.
Watch out, Verizon and AT&T.
Assuming none of you pay for application services, information services, what's the expectation of who is supposed to pay for it, or how it's supposed to get paid for? I mean, do you engage with
You care.
ads on Facebook so you help them monetize what they're doing for you? For example.
I don't really engage with the Facebook apps, mostly because I find them creepy. They're sort of targeted but completely missed the mark. So I don't ever, like, there's never anything I'm interested in, and they're just kind of, I don't really like the way they
Another
characterize
former
me.
sponsor, there we go.
I will interact with Reddit. I mentioned before. I will interact with their ads, and a little bit deliberately. I will sort of try to sort of pay attention to ads on their site.
I use Hulu, and when they have good ads that I appreciate, I will explore further. Because if they're good ads, then I'm actually like intrigued and I want to check out things.
What's a good ad?
Well, it has well, it has to be something that about something that I'm interested in, and then it has to be like well done. Like it can't be like, I don't know.
It has to be for free.
I don't know. But for certain things, I guess, like I expect to pay for things later.
Right.
I feel like I kind of understand that as a student.
Like when
get
you
a lot
turn
of
60
freebies.
or like
No, when you start having income.
So I expect that, like we mentioned before, we try out services a lot before we sort of pick one. So I am going to try out and have tried out at least 10 music streaming sites on the web. And I have accounts on all of them. I could log back in. I have all the emails that they spam me with filtered so I don't ever see them, but they exist. I could go look at my blogging information. But I still am stuck on Pandora, right? And so I know of those. And so I don't expect to pay my first foot in the door. So I'm paying after having walked through it a lot. I will pay for Dropbox after I graduate probably, because I've been using it for years and it's indispensable. And if I ever need more than 7, I will just pay for it. But the other thing about the ads is, for me actually, Facebook ads are amusingly relevant. And I will on occasion go sort of to them. But more importantly than go to them, I think this goes back to the thing about creative control over privacy settings a little bit that we mentioned, but on a Facebook ad, you can mark exit out and say it's uninteresting, not relevant, other, right? And you give you options. Hulu does the same thing, lets you tailor your ad experience. The idea that you now have control over that as well, I think is sort of what's going to make advertising, like that's what advertising needs to do now to stay relevant, is it has to compete with what I want now in a much more, like a much deeper way, I think. Like it's cute that Pandora, before I paid for it, was giving me ads for alcohol nonstop because I'm a 21-year-old male, so well done. But other than that, it's not like it was not actually what I wanted.
Analytics and it's very fine.
Right. So targeting is very different from actual personalization. So right now it's still targeted ads, which is why they're still sort of, for me, not what I care about unless they let me tell them that that's the case.
Also, I feel like cloud services are okay with students using their services for free. For example, Dropbox says, "Oh, we love students. We will double the amount of space you have." And the reason is that, as sort of Marco was pointing out, this is our time to explore, and these services know that once we explore and we find the right ones, we will be the ones that are proponents of these when we go, or maybe start our own company or join a new company, and we are advertising these services then, and that is when we expect to pay for them. So it's not that we are cheap and we're like, oh, we don't care about how these businesses are doing, but rather that because we're students, we sort of have this option. And I don't mind paying for these services after I graduate.
First hit's always free. The drug users have exactly this problem.
I wanted to go back to the question about what do you use your phone for? And I use my phone as a computer. I'm excited about the fact that it syncs with my Kindle, because I will read off my phone. I will check my Google Reader off my phone. I use my phone as a computer. I carry around my charger so I can use it as a computer.
2 questions, if I may. One is, are podcasts part of your lives? And 2, we foresee Twitter supplanting blogs as we know
No to the podcasts.
Yeah.
I'm not subscribed to any video feed of anything. The only
Audio? Audio?
Generally not. If it's something that someone has told me is worth me watching, I will watch it. But only then. Like me just exploring, I explore on a very limited number of things. I explore on TED.com. I explore on Hulu. That's about it. I don't really...
YouTube?
And YouTube. I'll occasionally explore on YouTube, but generally I was brought there by someone via Facebook or someone else. And then the second one was... Second question.
Twitter's supplanting blogs.
Twitter is just a nice filter mechanism for blogs. Blogs, I think, will still exist in posted content. Twitter just tells me what of that content and what part of that blogosphere I need to, blink at. Please.
Let me hop on the tail end of the blogging layering. You on Tumblr? Do you see that taking more of a share of the blogosphere than it currently has? I was there to yes, but do you see that as a bigger player in the blogosphere?
So I've used...
You're the only one who nodded your head,
Yeah.
so you're the expert.
So I've used Tumblr, I've used WordPress, I've used sort of a bunch of different TypeKit, or movable type.
Okay.
Oh, TypePad.
Yeah.
So I've used all those, but for me, what works happens to be WordPress. And I think for other people, what works is Tumblr, because Tumblr is great at me snapping a picture, and now it's content online. Right now, it's up on Tumblr, or me, quick thought, now it's on Tumblr. So I think, in all honesty, I think that in the same way that you think of TV and print and all these other, physical forms, more physical forms of actual media, that same diversity exists in the blogging platform. So WordPress is great for me because I want to install a readily customizable website at a URL that I own, and I happen to own hosting. So for me, WordPress is great. I just, and it installs it, updates itself, and I can add in 12 plugins for my mom's real estate website, and it just works now. Or I can add in 2 to my sister's photography thing, and it just works. So I think it's just about the different ones do different things. I don't know which one's going to win. I think it's more that lots of them will exist for different purposes.
And I got a meatball question. You're all in entrepreneurship. What's your business idea?
Well, so you guys have pursued sort of the entrepreneurial thing in a few different ways. So sometimes it's been in the classroom, so that's been short-lived. But also a few of you have done mobile dev projects. And then Marco, we talked about Olin learning, which was, Marco and the team took a year off and built a very comprehensive product that was in beta testing. And do you guys want to talk about some of your experiences?
I'll talk about my web application and my mobile application class. So I took both flavors. I'm taking the web application flavor right now. And basically how it's set up is that we have these things called sprints where a company or basically a sponsor comes in and talks about maybe the API they've developed or possibly a problem that they're facing. For example, we had Boston Urban Mechanics come in and tell us about the mayor's priorities. And we have to come up with an idea that engages what they want or their API somehow. And in a week, we have to develop an application that is sort of a prototype or a proof of concept. So we don't develop the application in full, but it's really gathered more around the idea or what your business model is essentially. And so we have a week to develop these, and that's kind of my favorite thing about the class. It's not just the technical work, but we're also inspired to think entrepreneurially and also think about design. So I guess the ideas that we've had have been more short-term as opposed to me coming up with an idea that I might, go on and do a startup company with.
I think just one thing to add, at the end of the week, the sponsors come back and we have to pitch our ideas in 3 to 5 minutes back to them and convince them that our idea is the best.
And they pick the winner, essentially.
So I think my perspective is a little different now than it was 2 years ago because I'm graduating in May. So the project that Steve mentioned that I took a year off with will probably still be some source of me adding in some development time or outsourced development work, sort of in small phases for me to see viability of that one. I'm working on 2 other side consulting things with other ex-Olin students that might in 3 years or 5 years be my job instead of any other corporate environment. That'd be nice. Work for myself. But other than that, I think before this year, all of the projects I worked on were very much, we thought about the user, the audience, but at the end of the day, I worked, I don't know how many hours on like a travel coordination app for Olin, storage coordination service, tutoring thing, like a bunch of things that aren't ever going to last very long, but they're just mostly for the learning experience. So that change has happened because I have to do something in my life. But yeah,
it's a great question though, because I'm seeing, I know from your mobile and web dev classes that many applications are being developed that are sort of could be the basis of something entrepreneurial.
For sure, right.
And from my perspective as well, teaching business or entrepreneurship, I'm seeing more and more integration projects that are based on apps. So right now, one of the projects in my class that's being developed involves the students have to do these change the world projects Joanne alluded to that is cause all kinds of chaos around here. But nevertheless, one of them is really neat. These students have come up with, well, we'll change the world. People want to sort of exchange good deeds, so they've created this thing called Karma Hub. And it's basically an exchange, a trading platform for good deeds. And their notion is to evolve this and to instate it in different closed communities, like college campuses. And so, just coincidentally, I had one of the venture capitalists come to class the other week, and he was listening to the students give a little 30-second overview of their different projects. And he just stopped when he heard this one, because this is the kind of thing that could be the seeds of something much more significant. And I think that, who knows if that particular project will be, but the ability for the students to be able to iterate and just experiment and try new things is incredibly powerful. And I imagine some of the time the intentions that it's just a fun thing, it involves an API, and it's part of an assignment. But so many other times it ends up potentially being more than that. And I think it's really wonderful, especially when students can have the feedback from all of you about their projects and what is potentially viable and what employers might look for in the future, or what might be fundable. I think it's just an extremely powerful thing. I actually wanted to ask, we heard the term, I think, income once or twice, and Martha, you referred to some job in your future, possibly vaguely implied. What are your expectations for employers? What are your thoughts from where you are right now? But as you move out into organizations, what are your expectations for IT infrastructure, using applications in the cloud, things like that?
The shortest answer I can give is they're too high, I think. And Olin was a big contributor to that, but the expectations are, I understand intellectual property constraints and, that I might be limited in what services I can broadcast and, what I need to think about and what I put online. But outside of that, if I want to do my meetings via Skype, if I want to do my meetings via Google Chat, if I'm working with, honestly, I know this is unrealistic, but it's becoming more and more possible, at least from alums that I know, for an employee that lives in San Francisco to decide to go visit people in Boston or Seattle and go there over the weekend, hang out that weekend, and work that following week at the offices over there, right? And so IT needs to work over there as well as it does for them in their main office, which is a high bar, I think, but it's more and more possible. So I think it's, I don't know if my answer covers all the different things, but it needs to be more dynamic. It needs to cater more to my specific preferences, and I think flexibility.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I'll comment on that as well. I keep in touch with a number of our graduates, and it's astounding to me how I'll get a phone call or call one of them, and they'll just be somewhere different all the time. So, especially Google, I've noticed, they tend to, I don't know if they promote this, but, there's one graduate, and he's in Brooklyn one day or 1 week, he's in Boulder another week, he's in San Francisco, and he enjoys moving around, he's got friends in all of these places, And he's a project manager. He's doing 4 different projects. He's got about 15 people under him right now, and it's not an issue, and it never has been. So I've pushed him on that just to try to understand it. So I think that flexibility thing is you guys sort of expect it, or it would be a significant benefit for an employer to offer that.
Right, for me, flexibility in the sense that they should be willing to change services if we find something better, because the one thing that I see I guess I can't say that I see, but I fear that in the corporate world, people will be very stuck to certain applications, and even if something else is more innovative, they will be very scared of change, which is what I'm afraid of.
On the same note, I do not want to use my employer's webmail service.
Whatever it may be.
I can guarantee it. I'm not going to prefer it to my Gmail. And one of the things I really like about my Gmail, I have 5 or 6 different email addresses that I maintain through my domain. And I like having them all in one spot, filtered appropriately.
It's interesting, one of my eBay and capstone course, or entrepreneurship capstone course, one of the problems my project is working on is, originally it was outsourcing and distributed work environments, and one of the big problems that came up when I talked to people about this topic was that the tool selection too often isn't necessarily grounded in the people who are using it day to day. So, and that's, I think, one of my biggest concerns for the corporate environment is that I'm going to have to use AT&T's web conferencing system with the code and the thing, when I want to meet with my team. And if my team would have just met over Skype, or just met over a phone call, 3-way phone conversation, but I have to sort of record it, and I have to go through the security thing and all this protocol. I guess unnecessary protocol, which I know is a very relative term, but that's what I'm worried the most about, or wary the most about, I think. And I think the example for someone who I spoke with, they said that the only reason they could get their small subdivision to use GoToMeeting.com or some other web conferencing tool was because it was an order of magnitude less expensive. And eventually that was enough of an argument for what it let them do with their budget for other things, that it was possible for them to do. That seems foreign to me.
So now, why does it concern you that you would have to adopt something different at a company? I mean, I think all of you said how flexible and adaptable you are, right? You went to a group of friends with Dropbox, picked it up, used it right away. What would be the concern about using some quote-unquote corporate standard?
Well, I think it's 2 things. I think one is that a lot of these free alternatives we're used to are better than a lot of the things that we're seeing built into companies. I did an internship a couple summers ago at an NGO, and their webmail client was abominable, but I had to use it because all of their corporate email was sent through that. And so I do not want my employer I'm flexible, but I'm flexible in I'm willing to improve way. The other thing is the loss of that flexibility. That I will get locked into their program where I'm used to being able to say, oh, I'm using Skype, oh, but this person is on Google Chat, and it'll be easier for me to just switch to Google Chat right now to work with them, as opposed to having to get us both onto the same client. My official AT&T login service with security codes and validations and stuff. That I want to preserve that flexibility.
I don't want to answer for them, but if they're flexible and adaptable, you probably have the expectation that the company you work for is flexible and adaptable, because that's how you operate. That's what you cherish. That's what you want and where you work.
Right, and I think the balance is security, intellectual property, other things that might be more important to a company, maybe a multi-billion-dollar company, versus an individual or something like that. And so I think it is a balance.
I also think there's a lot of value in everyone using the same software. You can pretty much count on the majority of people at Olin using Outlook, because that's what comes with all our computers if you get the IT image. And so that's kind of nice, especially when you're designing flyers and stuff, because if it looks like this on my computer, it's going to look like this on their computer. It's kind of only having to design for one browser, which would be nice, but that's not the real world. So there are benefits there. I think the thing is like what we do is we find what's good. Like we don't use Outlook for instant messaging because it's not good at that. But so like we're able to piece together the best parts of all the things that we know. And when we go to like a company, it's like use all of this, and parts of it may suck, but we still have to use it. And I think that kind of hurts a little.
Also, I understand the security issues, but I feel that some companies don't necessarily use a product just because it's more secure, but rather it's because it's what they're used to. So even if there's a better product out there in terms of security, they might not want to switch to it just because they're so used to using that old service.
I agree, and then you get into issues of, cost to change. Many of you mentioned you use something today, it's free, but you expect you're going to pay, later when you're making money or something like that. And so when you have to pay, it changes the equation a little bit.
I think it's part of the reason why smaller companies and startups appeal to so many Olin students. A lot of us are going to go work in big corporate worlds, but with the dream that we're going to learn of all the problems that are that exist in big corporations, so that when we start our own company, for example, we know exactly what to do, right?
I think one other thing that I also just keeping my ear to the ground is exactly the kind of explanation you just offered. I think a lot of times when younger people enter the workforce, they're not receiving this kind of information. So, for example, there are students at Olin who are very savvy about intellectual property. They understand the significance of trade secrets and patentability and all this stuff. I think that, however, for many individuals, they'll go in and then they'll wonder why these things are in effect. And there are legitimate answers to that, some of which you've provided in terms of intellectual property, security, cost of change. And I often sense that, I've seen in other circumstances with students that just that ability to understand the rationale behind sticking with something or changing to something different can be really powerful and can overcome sometimes the objections. So that's something that I've noticed.
There's actually a human nature thing behind the sort of not wanting to change. Risk study after risk study have shown that people are willing to assume something like an order of magnitude risk, breaking a leg or something, if they choose to do it. So people go skiing, people make choices that in which they take an order of magnitude. But if that risk is imposed on them, like we're going to build an incinerator in your backyard or something, that there's something like an order of magnitude less risk that they're willing to have imposed on you. And I think actually that explains entirely. If they choose to use something, that it takes an order of magnitude. They are an order of magnitude less willing to have something chosen for them in an area that they have an opinion about. So it's,
So, any other questions?
I have one quick question, just from each of you. I'd like to know what development environment you use, but more importantly, what language or a couple of languages are your favorites, not ones that what are your favorites for you? Nuts and bolts.
I program, I guess, on the Ubuntu platform, and I usually do Java and Python. Those would be my two favorite. And currently I'm learning Ruby on Rails, which I'm really enjoying, because the entire deployment process is so quick and fast through GitHub and Heroku, which I think is one of my favorite things.
Now, do you settle on like Eclipse or any integrated development environment?
Oh yeah, I love
just
Eclipse. Sometimes, like for Ruby on Rails, it comes with like RubyMine is the preferred IDE, but in general, I really like Eclipse.
I'm also a big fan of Ruby. I'm a big fan of Python, and I like Objective-Camel, which is a little lesser known language. Those are probably my preferred languages. And then I do everything in Ubuntu coding-wise, and I use gedit actually. I really like. I can't handle my programming environment adding closing tags for me. I don't know why, but it drives me crazy. Probably because half the time I'm working backwards, and so I write the closing tag and then write the opening tag, and then it creates a new closing tag for me. So I don't want my text editor doing much more. Like I want coloring is kind of nice, but I can live without it, and I want.
You can add that to gedit.
Right, you can add that to gedit.
You want to drive the car.
Yeah, I want to drive the car. I want automatic indentation and line numbers. That's it.
On that note, I also use Emacs, so there is some value to using just a plain text editor, because you can add whatever macros you want to it.
So I think it's changed for me over time depending on what kind of development I've been doing. So originally it was just Dreamweaver, basic HTML, CSS pages that got put up on a server I didn't own. Once I was doing LAMP stuff, so actual owning the server and having some control over that, we used basically the LAMP service that was provided through some sort of hosting company. So we had it through Bluehost, and we just had everything through that. And then we layered on top of that all these frameworks, so Cake PHP to do deployment stuff for PHP, EXTJS for sort of a UI framework for JavaScript. For a while then I switched over to doing XAML, so Silverlight stuff. So I worked with Microsoft's Expression Studio, which actually I think is better than Dreamweaver, though it is for Silverlight. So I played around with that. And on the side it was sort of Python just for like sort of, automatic deployment of builds when I worked at SolidWorks. So I was tired of downloading builds every day. So I just wrote that. And then sort of goofy side things in Python. But more recently I think the trend is Ruby. I haven't learned it yet, but that will be what I do before another year from now. I'll learn that.
Good idea.
Yeah.
The first language I learned was Java, and I kind of still have a place in my heart for Java. And if I program in Java, Eclipse is definitely what I try to use. And then recently, learning Ruby on Rails for the web development course and using Emacs. And I like Ruby a lot. It's like magic.
No Python?
Oh, Python, yeah.
I know,
we
that's
learn
why I
it,
just
but I don't.
You're leading the witness, Counselor.
No, I just
I
did you forget to
haven't
mention
used it for anything. I feel like if you're doing like heavy duty stuff, you wouldn't use Python, but if you're doing like web stuff, you may not use it. And, I don't know. I use Ruby, although like Python, I guess, is an alternative to that. I don't know.
So I just realized we've gone over. Oh,
It's okay, Steve, you can keep going, sorry.
is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So feel free if anybody needs to leave. Please.
Question about Java. Does it go also into J2EE? Or? No?
It's on my to-do list.
Like
Enterprise
Java.
edition.
Oh.
The J2E stuff, we use J2E.
The server, what all that stuff is talking to it, the server's name.
That's enough.
So it's not
Yeah, exactly.
but
Client-facing stuff.
So question, in terms of your expectations of wanting to go to work someplace where you can just do basically anything you want with Skype or email, whatever like that, is there any buzz out there that if you go to work at Facebook, it's just like being in college, only you get paid for it and the pizza's better? Or if you have an offer from an Oracle versus a Microsoft, does Microsoft allow you to do more things and stuff? And might that be sort of the differentiator in terms of, I just like the environment there because it's reflected in sort of freedom of information access, and I assume it's going to be other parts of the culture like that as well? Or am I projecting?
I'm probably never going to work at a large company, and by large I mean if it has more than 100 employees, I consider that a minus. 150 I can put up with. So I will never work at Oracle. I will never work at Microsoft. I will probably never work at Google, though that's the one sort of, they have kind of an interesting culture there. I will be working in probably startups, or my internship this summer is a web consultancy firm that's about 80 to 90 people. And those are the kind of places I find myself being. And those are much more likely to be flexible. The more open source work a company does, the more likely I am to work.
Everybody else?
So I've done the Microsoft, I've done the startup inside of a company, and then I've done startup. And I think that it's more important to me actually, not necessarily the size of the company, but what I perceive the culture to be, I guess. Right? So there are cases where a large company is acceptable, or the role might. So I think all those are variables. The one bit of advice that I got recently that I thought was good was figure out whether the company was started by a business person, a designer, or an engineer. It generally tells you a lot about their culture and how fast they grew. So those three, that sort of initial path and how fast they grew will tell you about their culture and what year they were founded, because generally you know what sort of was going on at the time. So those three factors or variables are sort of what I would use to characterize any job or role.
like with respect to like the cultures at Google and Microsoft maybe being more attractive, I think it's not so much like I expect to have to maybe change my habits. I mean, I have like a certain way that I work and it's at Olin and it works for me because I'm productive somehow. But I do like I feel like what's attractive about Google is they're like you get to spend your time how you see fit. It's not like your 8 hours a day is defined, and you can like if you think you're going to be productive and this is how you want to do it, like go ahead and do that. And I understand I may not like when I'm at school, at any point of the day I can take a break and like watch a movie. Like I don't expect to be able to do that at work, but I like the flexibility of kind of being able to choose how I want to chunk my time and how long I spend working on one project before switching to the next. And I guess like the last thing I want to add is like I do appreciate how hard it is to kind of instigate, or this year I've started to appreciate how hard it is to instigate change in really large organizations, like having or being a part of the leadership board of the Society of Women Engineers, which is like an organization of volunteers. So it's even more hard to push out any changes you want to make.
So Steve, I'm going to throw myself under the bus here, so I know I'm doing that consciously, but so if you guys were starting over at Olin from an IT service perspective, what do you care about or what should we just stop doing?
I think you should empower the students more. I guess. Yeah.
Root access to the servers, okay? Each you say more.
Then when there's production and there's development and there's tests and there's the trustees, so we're confident. Okay.
Well, I just feel like a lot of the things. I feel like IT does a lot of things very well, and I definitely really appreciated them when something's happened to my computer and I'm like, help! I need help, and I just go and it gets taken care of. But I feel like a lot of the things that I've enjoyed about Olin, for not necessarily IT because it's not IT. It's right. The Olin Society of Women Engineers website is not on IT servers. It's run completely separately on another server at Olin that's not maintained by IT. And the wikis that we use for web development are not part of IT. And I've heard that there's reasons for why IT won't support them, but I feel like the way that we work is if IT says no, then we're just going to go do it anyway. And
yeah, that is the way that you work.
I don't know if there's a way to make people work together more. I don't know.
I guess for me, I think it has to do. So no complaints for me on the hardware, email help desk, get problems resolved side, zero. That's great. I think the only issues I've seen are that, and this is I think very specific to Olin culturally, but. There's the IT's ability, and just IT in general as the field's ability to sort of support me wanting to use WordPress or a Google server or some app engine thing or run some Python scripts that I need access to the ability to just cater to my project needs on a whim and sort of get that infrastructure up quickly seems to not exist, or it exists for a limited subset. If I want to do a blogging platform through IT servers that I don't want to have to deal with anything, I must use this client, or I must use this. And so a lot of times I'll just, now that I have a hosting plan, I just buy a domain and put it there. But what that does is projects generally tend to be less sustainable at Olin, especially if they're meant to be for the whole community or whatnot. So I don't know that that's not necessarily solvable, but that's, if I could pick my service and just dump into an thing and get it up and running quick.
I think it would be cool if there were a separate playground, because I don't mind banging my head against the wall and doing some of the IT work myself, but it'd be nice to have just a little bit of support and just here's a playground, we can break things here. I don't know, because part of it is I want to learn also how to take care of my own computer, and there's definitely times when I've gone to the IT desk and they're help me, and they're it's online, do it yourself, and I'm okay, and I kind of feel sad, but then I'm oh well, I'm learning.
That's what you get when you mess up and get experience.
Okay.
They all need their own virtual instance in a private cloud. With
Well, I mean, well, the reality check for us is, I mean, that's exactly why we're trying to look at what we can do out in the cloud.
Sure.
Exactly the answers you can take, because there's no way with limited resources that we could be as agile as we'd like to be able to meet these needs. So for us, being able to find the right solution in the cloud and some integrated way to handle that is kind of where the challenge is. But no, this is good. All right, so the rest, you got a couple more shots there.
Stop installing SolidWorks on my computer.
Okay.
Stop installing what?
SolidWorks.
All right, so we'll just have to talk to your faculty about that.
First thing I do if I get my laptop reimaged is I uninstall SolidWorks. The next thing I do is install Google Chrome. So
Flexible images.
I mean, yeah, I'm mostly disappointed by the fact that I'm sort of bound to the Windows image, for example, if I want IT support. So if I want to download my own image, they refuse to help me, which I find kind of frustrating because I can find better images that, for example, have a faster load-up time. Our Windows has a horrible load-up time.
Say it.
If you install Windows 7 yourself, it loads up really quickly.
Exactly, but then IT won't help you.
So we chat with me offline about that, because that should be able to fix, yeah.
And don't tell any of your friends.
Right, that's already long gone.
So
Too
on
late.
that note, well, why don't we do this? Are you guys able to stick around a little bit? And if anybody has questions or just want to talk with the individual?
Sure, and they actually put cookies and brownies outside.
All right.
Great,
It's
thanks.
about time. So thanks very much.